Hi, before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which the Sydney Knowledge Hub sits and where I am right now, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which you are joining us from today. Pay respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. Australia always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name is Sarah. I'm the community manager at the Sydney Knowledge Hub. We connect life-changing research done here at the University of Sydney with the outside world, in particular startups and SMEs. We run a co-working space in the Merriweather building on the Darlington campus, and events such as this one to remove barriers between academia and industry and support researchers impact as many people as possible through research commercializations and partnership with industry. We have an amazing panel with us today of startups working in the digital health sector. This is actually the last event of our 1 month-long event series on digital health. The first few events were around commercialization of digital health research and industry careers for PhD students in digital health. We had a lot of questions on startups for these events, so I think that this panel will answer a lot of those. You will receive an email after this panel with resources and other events around digital health and startups, and also links to these past events. Now, I will give the stage to Rupal Ismin, who's the director of the Sydney Knowledge Hub, and she will be moderating this discussion today. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Sarah. You have a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, so if you have any questions, pop them in there. I have a few questions, hopefully not too many that's taking up all the time, but feel free to pop them in there. As Sarah mentioned, we have a really great and diverse panel of relatively early stage businesses here right now. We have Andrew Akib, who is the founder and CEO of Maslow, which is a digital rehab assistant and a startup out of UTS, as his shirt shows. He participated in the Remarkable Accelerator, a program for technology to assist people with disability. We have Luke Grana in the center for me, of Andi, who's the founder of Andi Health. He is also a member of the Sydney Knowledge Hub, so he is sitting on the opposite corner of where I am. Andi is a suite of personal devices and support for people to be more proactive about their health. He's also publishing a paper with digital health researchers out of the Faculty of Medicine and Health. So a really kind of interesting engagement with the university with, you know, as I kind of say, no money changing hands. So good on you, Luke, for that collaboration. We have Zara Lord, who is the founder and CEO of uPaged, which is an enterprise solution. Good on you for developing an enterprise solution in the digital health space, which is essentially contracts with very big businesses. Hard but lucrative channel of distribution. uPaged is helping nursing shifts, helping fill nursing shifts on demand. And Zara found and saw a need for this while built this business during her time as a clinician. We have Sarah McDonald, founder and CEO of Baymatob, which are medical devices for better monitoring of pregnancy to cut the rate of unnecessary interventions during pregnancy. She developed that here during her time as a PhD student at the University of Sydney. And Baymatob's also the recipient of a $1.5 million New South Wales Medical Devices Fund. And finally, we have Natasha Rawlings, who is no stranger to events like this. She is the chair of Cardihab, which is a spinoff of the CSIRO, and also the investment manager of the Uniseed. Uniseed is one of 5 capital University of Sydney is one of 5 capital partners of Uniseed. So she helps a lot of researchers here at the university and of the other 4 universities figure out a pathway to commercialization and supports them once they are ready for that pathway. So to kick it off, I'm going to ask all of you to tell us a little bit about your business and your role in the business. And Natasha, I'll hand it off to you first.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'll start with Cardihab. I'm the chair of Cardihab, and I've been involved for a bit over 3 years, helping to really get it off the ground. And it's been a really hard journey, so I'm going to share the reasons why later on. I think it's always really good to get the heads up, especially from other entrepreneurs. And then my day job, I guess, is the investment manager for Sydney at Uniseed. So I get to see a whole bunch of research across a whole lot of sectors that could be big businesses one day. So I have a great job.
Great, and I was writing something down, but Natasha, can you tell us quickly what Cardihab is?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so it started off as rehab for cardiac events. And it's really a clinician portal to speak and be in contact with their patients and get extra data that they might not otherwise in a face-to-face situation. But it's moving quite rapidly into chronic care as well. So I hope that helps.
Excellent. Luke, over to you next.
Thank you, Rupal, and thanks for allowing me to talk today with the other panelists. So my name is Luke. I'm the CEO and founder of Andi Health. We're building a new proactive health platform. This all started, I was living in Hong Kong for the past 7 years, building an e-commerce business over there. And I came back to Australia in late 2019. And from being in Hong Kong and working quite hard, I was putting on weight. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and I started seeing my GPs here in Australia, and I realized that there was not a lot of guidance and support that I was getting to be more proactive to prevent the onset of chronic conditions, and I really felt like I was just on the path to becoming a stat in Australia with a chronic condition. And that's where I saw that there's, I think there's an opportunity to a market gap to create a proactive health platform for Australia for people to prevent the onset of chronic conditions. And I've been working on Andi over the past 12 months.
Great, thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks a lot. G'day everyone. My name is Andrew, so I'm a co-founder of Maslow. And what we do is we make it as easy as possible for people with paralysis to manage their care and their rehab from home. And what this looks like for us is we have a mobile and voice integrated platform, so with Google Home, Alexa, etc., that users can interact with all of their therapists from, coordinate all of their carers, and communicate remotely with specialists so that they can get the best possible information about their health from home. And we started Maslow after a friend of ours had a traumatic brain injury, and we saw how quickly he shifted from being quite independent to relying on an entire team, an entire ecosystem of support workers, therapists, family and friends, just to continue to live an independent and flexible life. We saw how challenging it was to coordinate all the communication inside of all of this, and we saw how that resulted in him missing opportunities to take care of his health and resulting in secondary complications like pressure sores, pneumonia, UTIs that landed him back in hospital that could have been avoided. So for us, it really started with designing it for one person whose experience we shared and whose experience we understood. But since launching in the middle of COVID last year, we've kind of grown out to having, essentially hundreds of people signing up to it every week and growing a slowly and stably growing user base, just one customer at a time.
Thanks for sharing that. I have a dear friend that's going through that right now. So realizing kind of the importance of an assistant like that. Sarah, over to you.
So hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I started in this space after the traumatic birth of my son, Ollie, who's also the namesake of our technology. The Baymatob is basically developing Ollie, which is a new method of monitoring pregnancy and labour in a way that is to address or pick up complications before they become catastrophic. So providing prospective or predictive capabilities as opposed to waiting for things to go wrong. And the hope with that is to reduce unnecessary interventions. At the moment, we make a lot of decisions around inductions, augmentations, caesarean sections, which are more for medico-legal reasons rather than genuine need. And we also wait for complications to happen, such as stillbirth, such as fetal distress, such as uterine rupture, until we act and respond on them. So that's very much our big focus. It's definitely grown from the initial idea of a mother and an engineer. So I'm a mechatronic engineer by background. We've got about 4.7 million in to date. We're a team of 13 engineers building, developing internally. We're currently mid-pilot study. At the moment, we just reached for this study 200 women in the data set today. And yeah, lots happening there.
Wonderful, nice milestone. Zara, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rupal. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, everyone, for having me on. I'm the CEO and founder of uPaged. uPaged is a digital platform or two-sided marketplace that connects nurses and other healthcare professionals to on-demand work. We exist to create a more meaningful connection between on-demand practitioners and healthcare facilities so that nurses and other healthcare professionals can get meaningful on-demand work for years to come in a way that doesn't break hospital budgets and in a way that gets patients more specialized care. So we facilitate informed clinical decision-making in the platform supported by a matching algorithm. But we're a firm believer that no matching algorithm replaces good clinical judgment. So combine technology with clinical decision support tools. We've been going for 3 years now. We're really just based in Sydney at the moment. We've got nurses all over Australia, and we're just in a scale-up phase at the moment.
That's great. It's nice to, all the 4 founders here. All of this is kind of, your business has arrived from really deep personal experience, and then kind of, from there you assess the market need of the product. So really, really nice founding stories. Something that's probably one of the biggest challenges in digital health and the health sector, full stop, is that your end user might be very different than kind of who you designed the product for. Who is your customer? I'm going to actually ask all of you this, and I'm going to start with Zara.
Our customers are healthcare facilities, anyone who currently employs or engages healthcare professionals. We aren't the employer of nurses or healthcare professionals, so we connect them to meaningful employment relationships, opportunities.
Along with that, Zara, can you tell us about your first sale?
Yeah, sure. So before I even built the platform, I had a crazy huge business plan built and a financial model, and I got a small prototype created, and I put it in front of a hospital CEO at the Chris O'Brien Lifehouse, and she was just like, "Yep, makes sense. You should build this." So they've been one of our early customers and are still using the platform today. Are
they paying for it?
Yeah.
Are they paying for it? Good.
They are, yeah.
Excellent.
Have been for a year and a half now. So really validating and nice to get them on before we actually spent any money on technology build.
Andrew, are you selling yet? Who are your customers?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Just to add on to what Zara said. So we had a similar experience in that when we kind of researched and designed and built the product, we were connecting with a community of mostly young people with spinal cord injuries from all across Australia. And there was no kind of commercial construct around the product at that point. We were just prototyping with them, testing with them, really like kind of making sure that it worked for that end user. So what happened was when we decided to commercialize it, we were honestly really umming and ahhing about like, how the hell do we go about this? But because we'd already engaged with that community and they were already bought in, as soon as we opened the doors for it being able to be paid for, that community that helped us co-design it were the first to all pay for it up front. So that was a really valuable experience. Another thing around this is that for our users in particular, they're the economic buyer in that they're making the decision to purchase it, but they're covered under the NDIS, so the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And that's in place so that those users can have subsidized purchases towards products like ours. And for us, understanding exactly how that mechanism works in that, one's an insurance scheme, but they're giving budget to participants so that they can make decisions about what they purchase and use for themselves. Understanding how that works for us was like imperative to us coming up with the commercial model for it. So it's effectively the NDIS who is the payer, but it's our end user who is the chooser.
And so was your experience at Remarkable, were those relationships that with NDIS formed through Remarkable?
I think our mindset around how to really leverage that was formed through Remarkable, and how to operate as a business as opposed to like a product for impact design company. We were prototyping, we were scared to sell it, to be honest with you. We just weren't that commercially minded. And then as soon as we kind of got into Remarkable, they taught us how to bring those two things together and say, look, you've got to sell this product in order to make a sustainable impact. And the only way to do that is to be financially sustainable. So, you know, sell it, have a higher margin, build better products, and make more impact. They help that make sense, right?
Great. And Luke, I know you are pre-sales right now, and kind of similar to Andrew, I think you want to take the route of kind of seeing what demand is before you kind of go into production. Can you tell us a little bit about who your target customer is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Andy's still very early stage. I spent most of last year researching our customer and also the MVP of our proactive health platform. And where we ended up was bundling health devices, so a smart scale, blood pressure monitor, and activity tracker with health analytics, including visualizations and health scores, with health coaching to make it more data driven. So bundling the three into one integrated platform. And our end customer is our end user. So for the first couple of years, we've got a direct-to-consumer business model. This year, we're building out the platform, and then next year, we're running a large-scale pilot program. But it's really who we're targeting is members aged 30 to 50. We see that group as highly motivated to be proactive about their health. They have a mindset of wanting to live older, work longer, and to really improve their health. And they're also comfortable with devices and data. So yeah, we're employing a D2C business model initially to run research and validate, and then later on we'll look to have partners.
Good. Sarah, I know you are a hardware-focused business. Can you tell us a little bit about your customers, and potentially, like, along with that, your first customer? How did you get your first customer?
So we're a medical device route. So we're completely pre-revenue. We're going through FDA de novo breakthrough process. So we're a little way off before we can make sales in that route. In terms of who our customer is, we're looking more clinicians, hospitals, health systems, depending where you're looking geographically. For us, I guess, in terms of buy-in or customer at the moment is looking, we started in New South Wales Health, initially partnered with RPA through the initial research with Sydney University, and being able to do our initial study there, 86 women through our proof of concept study was the initial buy-in that then helped us get the first lot of MDF that we got. We branched to other hospitals within New South Wales and internationally, and had our clinical partnerships on board that has then helped us gain more data and more support to help validate. But in terms of actual tangible sales, we need FDA's box tick before we can do that.
And has the funding from the Medical Devices Fund, I guess, has that network helped you with any of this? Like, do they kind of help with that pathway, or is it kind of you figuring out mostly for yourself?
I think it's very custom. So we've been very fortunate. We've received 2 lots of MDF funding, and New South Wales Health is incredible in terms of how they support and structure unique to that opportunity. I don't think they see any opportunity as a cookie cutter solution. So I think if you ask for help and support in that way, they will connect and guide. So yeah, I think there's fantastic resources there. And I think New South Wales Health System is one that's just unprecedented in terms of how those networks work, how the districts work as well, and how open they are to innovation and collaboration as well.
That's wonderful. Natasha, I know Cardihab must be selling if you're investing in them. Can you tell us a little bit about Cardihab?
Yeah, we invested pre-sales, but there was enough proof at the time to make it an interesting opportunity. So our payers, which is always so important to identify in health, are public hospitals, private hospitals, and health insurance companies. But really understanding who needs what to actually buy from you is super important. We're not a medical device, we're a digital therapy. And so what you have to do now through the TGA is have your software as a medical device accreditation, which we have. So whenever you're selling anything digital into health, it actually has to go through a clinical trial, not quite in the same way that it would for Sarah's device, but then to do ongoing development, which of course you do in software, and make it better and better and, you know, keep ahead of your competition, you have to then have a lot of processes in place to make sure that you're developing your software in a way that isn't going to hurt anybody. So that's super important if you're selling to clinicians and hospitals.
Mm-hmm. Sarah Lacroix, if you're listening, when you send through the follow-up email, I think it would be good to include that TGA, do I need TGA approval guide that And Health sent us last week. I think that'd be nice to kind of consider what your routes are and how difficult of a pathway this is going to be. Sarah, your IP was developed while you were here at the university. Can you tell us a little bit about the IP process with the University of Sydney? From your perspective, not how the process works, how it went from Baymatob's point of view.
Sure. Do you have specific questions?
I guess tell us maybe perhaps when you went to the university, what the university's role is currently in Baymatob, and you know how difficult that was to clarify with the IP.
Okay. In terms of when we went to the university, look, it was really early in the piece when, so step back, the whole reason I did a PhD wasn't because I wanted to do a PhD. I had this experience, I started talking to the Natashas and people within the industry and world, and I was, not Natasha directly, sorry Natasha, but I was put in a bucket of, you're a mother, you're an engineer, you're not a doctor, what do you know? And it was pushed aside. I was very fortunate. So at Sydney Uni, if you ever want to do development, I will spruik them to the high earth. My old supervisor, I did a medtech honours with, Graham Brooker, is pretty renowned in that area at Sydney Uni, absolutely incredible guy. I went to him and said, I've got this idea, we need to do something, I need data. From there, we found out there was the Albert McKern Scholarship with the Faculty of Medicine, partnered with John Hyatt, Halifax, so that's an obstetrics midwifery supervision, and we pulled together how is this going to look. So that was to get into the university pretty much from the start of the PhD, was on CDIP's doorstep saying, hey, I need to do an ROI, hey, I need to do this, and really pushing it up there. I had to sell not just what the invention was, that it was innovative, and it's a really hands-on process to get it through. You can't be passive in it if you want to be successful. It was also showing that there was a commercial, like a transaction at the other side. So for me as a founder that wanted to then be able to take it out, I think was probably heavily weighted as well, as opposed to I'm just going to develop this thing and then hopefully GE will take it or someone will take it. It wasn't easy. And that's, I don't say that specifically to any one party, but it's a full-on process when you're trying to do a PhD at that time, handling 2 kids and everything else. In terms of background knowledge, it helped that I had tried to do that process for my honours before, so I had an idea of the process. It helped that I had worked in intellectual property for a firm specialised in that space and had an understanding in terms of how patent structures, what is innovative or not. That definitely helped. I think it helped that I had some fantastic advisors around to help guide and direct as well. But it was, if there are specific questions, I'm happy to answer. You've got a very big Pandora's box there. So I don't know if the people in the audience want to ask questions, but it's probably not something I want to open unless there's specifics.
Yeah, feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A chat about records of invention or the patent process, or, you know, CDIP is our commercialization team here at the university. Yeah. ROI is a record of invention, which essentially is a document that you have to file with the university if you're a staff or student even at the university, if you want to kind of take the IP forward. Andrew, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say, in terms of involvement now, your second part of that question, we've completely assigned, that's now all company IP. So that's a process in its own right.
Good. Andrew, does UTS have anything to do with your startup other than kind of supporting you in your journey?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of everything to do with the startup, to be honest, supporting us on our journey. So yes, I've heard a lot of challenging kind of experiences around tech transfer and intellectual property relationships between companies and universities. And yes, that relationship is very important, but understandably can be very challenging sometimes. We're blessed to have not had to go through any of that. So UTS Startups is actually, I see, is quite unique in the sense that they provide a platform for entrepreneurs that are alumni, staff, current students to build their businesses, and they don't take a cut of any of the IP, but they do create a really, really strong network of other founders that are going through similar stages as yourself. For any problem or challenge that you've got, there's generally someone else in the network that knows how to solve it. And they've attracted a really good set of mentors from right across the startup ecosystem in Australia as well. So yeah, I mean, it's I think having a community and a network is really, really important to make sure that you know that you're not going through this alone, and that if there's any challenge that you're going through, someone else has definitely solved it before. And the other side of it is, you know, there's a lot of insanity that comes with being a startup founder. It can be very easy to get into your own bubble and not figure out how to progress to the next stage. And sometimes you just need to see other people in different stages to just shake you out of that and help you get to that next stage. So yeah, I think our relationship with UTS is a community relationship, and it's the support that they've provided through our journey, just like you said.
Yeah, I think it's really important, as you mentioned, about the community, because oftentimes if you're an inventor founder, your experience is somewhat limited to kind of, you know, the people in your scientific world and your supervisor. And so just getting that exposure into kind of understanding what you don't know, to either learn, upskill yourself, ask a lot of questions, or to have a complementary co-founder is just really important. And I think all the universities have some support around that. You know, the University of Sydney has Incubate and Proto workshops with the Sydney Knowledge Hub. We have access to Natasha, who's always willing to have a conversation. So just keep a lookout if you're looking to kind of embark on that process. Tosh, anything that you wanted to add in terms of when or how researchers should think about going to their commercialization team, and kind of how prepared do they have to be to have that conversation?
I think it's always, I had one the other day actually with Stephen Lamb and a student. So it was really awesome actually. So Stephen's from CDIP, and I think it's good to, if you're looking at commercializing your work and you have a supervisor involved, it's very likely that the university will have some ownership over it. And also it might not, what you're working on, it might not entirely be your work, and it might actually not even belong to the university. It might belong to the people who decided to procure that research in the first place. So it's actually quite complicated. So I think what you need to do is go into CDIP and start that conversation early and talk about what you're doing. And they're going to give you really specific pointers about who to go and speak to, your supervisor, other people in the faculty, and clear a few things up. And then, you know, if it's clear, you're probably all right, if it's your own IP, to go ahead and do what you need to do. But if it's not clear, it's going to be a more complicated process. Not to say that you won't get to commercialize it, but it's just going to take a while to go through it. And that's because CDIP's really, really busy. They've got a lot of other things on their plate, but also they're not responsible for getting all of that information. It might rely on contacting other universities, other research partners, and that all takes time. So be patient, but be a squeaky wheel.
Mm-hmm. And starting early, again, just to reiterate that, because it does take a lot of time. And Sarah Lacroix, actually, if you can add in this CDIP, potentially Stephen Lamb's contact information for you know, I know we have a lot of researchers here on the call, that would be great. Zara, you had talked about this a little bit when you're talking about your first customer, but you know, you have a marketplace. Essentially, you're connecting nurses who want shifts with hospitals that need shifts. Can you tell us a little bit about how you developed your proof of concept? I mean, marketplaces are tough, right? Because you have to match supply and demand. There has to be, roughly equal, and oftentimes it's easy to get the supply, and the demand is lags a little bit behind. Could you tell us about your proof of concept and how the product kind of look at its early stages?
Yeah, sure. So our initial proof of concept was around making sure that the match was right, and we were able to do all of the compliance required to get nurses placed in on-demand shifts. And it wasn't just, so it's the police checks, your APRA registration, you're working with children. There's a whole myriad of documents and compliance that a clinician needs to be placed. But then also right down to the usability, taking in factors of like what are managers doing in their day? Are they going to want to use an app? How are they going to get notifications? Do emails even make it to hospital inboxes, which is quite often not the case? There's so many factors that we had to get right in that initial proof of concept, and we were so grateful for our early customers for their support during that stage, because it is something that's hard, and managers are busy. They care less about technology and more about getting their job done. But we had some really awesome supportive early customers, and we were able to validate that we can provide a better match through technology and informed decision making. The marketplace side is the more challenging side, because then as you grow and scale, all the matching technology in the world means nothing if you don't have supply coming through. So if managers aren't getting their job done, and that is filling a shift when they need a clinician, then all that matching technology is for nothing. So for us in our situation, we're lucky that as a marketplace, we're really heavily tied to the demand side. So we're the people that the hospitals go to first because of our price point, our user experience and service delivery. From there, we're less prescriptive about what makes a good match, but instead showing the sum of all the parts that makes this nurse the most capable nurse for the job, and really trying to maintain that human element in it, because the more technical you get, the less you incorporate the actual person at the end on the other side of it. So we've got lots of really engaging our copy and the way that things are prompted through the platform. We try and really maintain the human side of what we're doing, as well as in our customer service. So we call ourselves high tech, high touch. We automate what we can, and we foster a really great user experience and informed user journey. But then we're very contactable, and we're very supportive, because at the end of the day, it's humans providing care, and that's a big philosophy of ours. Then we're stepping into a new space now, which we're really excited about. The on-demand world is a really complicated space. There's lots of differing contracts and relationships. We've got a whole heap of talent that are with recruitment agencies, and we don't want to exclude them from work opportunities. So when we're so heavily tied to the demand side, we're now stepping into a new space where we're able to open shifts up to recruitment agencies in the marketplace as well, which will mean that managers only go to one place to fill all their on-demand shifts, but we can facilitate that in a really meaningful way that gives recruitment agencies longevity in the industry. So it kind of means that hospitals still get that high quality service delivery and are able to select talent based on their skill and the total price point, which I believe will create a lot of longevity and mean that clinicians can get on-demand work for years to come still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how did those first conversations with nurses to get onto the platform go?
The first ones was a lot of hand holding. The technology wasn't pretty. It was not well informed. I'm a non-technical founder, so our first product was not a good version of it. They say that if you're not embarrassed of your MVP, then you've taken too long to release. So I definitely ticked that one. It was the only purpose it served, our early MVP, was that we got feedback. We learned very quickly about what people did and didn't like, and it wasn't informative enough. So that was the prompt to hire to work really closely with a designer. We got new wireframes built, and we actually pretty much rebuilt the whole platform by now. But we were able to rebuild it with a product in the market. So we were just solving problems as we went, which was really good.
And Natasha, just to clarify, can you tell the folks listening of what an MVP is?
Minimal viable product. So you could try and build everything right to begin with, but the black art of it is picking the things to build that people actually care about.
Great. And Luke, speaking of MVPs, you just received funding from the New South Wales government for your MVP. Congratulations, it's really wonderful. You know, you're an entrepreneur, this is not your first time around the bush as an entrepreneur. You have a radically transparent direct-to-consumer clothing business, which I think is fantastic. Can you talk about how you developed insights into, you are developing your insights into your MVP? And if you can kind of talk about that research that you're working with Corinne, that would be great. Luke?
Yeah, industry, and it's been a
I can't. I think that was me. So is everyone good? I think we're okay. I think we're back on now.
Okay. Yes, it's been a steep learning. What are the pain points concerning proactive health? Just confirming, can everyone hear me?
We actually did, I think we're just started to. I don't know if everyone misses. Can you actually start the answer to that question again, Luke? Because I think we're all good now.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll just start again. So for me, it's been a very steep learning curve towards the healthcare industry. And we started in the early 2020 with the challenge of how do we bring proactive health to Australians? How do we make it affordable and accessible? So it's a huge challenge. And we started doing problem and solution interviews with about 60 people, just learning about what their challenges are and ideally what type of platform they would use, what they would pay for. So we learned a lot through that process. And then we started working with the Sydney University Charles Perkins Centre, so Corinne's team, and we took the learnings from the problem solution interviews into a co-design workshop. And it was about 40 people that we ran some surveys and a workshop to really refine it further, what an MVP would look like, what devices, what type of analytics, what type of health scores, what type of health coaching guidance that our members would potentially want. So then we were able to refine that further, and that was very, very strong. And then lastly, what we've done over the past 3 months is we've been working with a company in Melbourne called Planet Innovation. They're a medtech manufacturer in Melbourne, and we've been doing MVP workshops and a proof of concept trial with them. So we got our sample devices and we built a proto app with the analytics and the health scores, and we have a couple of health coaches on board, and we basically ran a simulated trial of what the program would look like. And that actually just finished just recently, and we have a lot of really good insights into what the platform will be. So now we're actually going into the build phase. We've just recruited 6 people. So we have an engineer and UX designer and operations manager. So I guess over the past 12 months, we've really learned a lot on what a potential product could be. And now we're starting the early stage of the build.
Great. And Andrew, speaking of talking to your customers, you participate in the Remarkable Accelerator. Can you tell us a little bit about how that program helped you? I'm guessing kind of talking to your customers was a big part of that program.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that before we started the Remarkable program, before all of that, we started with kind of a strong understanding of all the clinical research that was happening in the spinal cord injury space, what the levers were for readmissions and what the costs around that were. And we kind of started there with a mix of having also really connected with the community from the bottom level up around Australia. So for us, we were kind of experts at like the top level of spinal cord injury research and kind of health economics, but also the bottom level in terms of behavior change. And when we went into Remarkable, we only had a very, very juvenile MVP, like a very, very basic MVP. But we came in with a strong understanding of where our customers were, what they needed, what their base was, and that type of thing. And so what Remarkable did was it taught us to go from being stubborn about solving a problem and understanding a customer need to being just as stubborn about building a business around that, which, believe it or not, are actually two different things. So, you know, you can have a really deep insight into an area, a really deep insight into technology, a problem space, whatever it is. But in order to commercialize that, in order to make that into something sustainable, you really got to understand what is the construct that sits around that in order to support that. From anything from customer acquisition and marketing, customer onboarding, managing a financial model, and really understanding what you're going to need from the rest of the ecosystem in order to support your roadmap long term. So I think Remarkable is really good at bringing that into the space that we were working on, which was fundamentally disability tech, which has its own nuances around who the key partners are, what the funding models are, what the customer needs are, and how to balance those two hats. One, you know, which is the startup hat of, or the commercial hat of like move fast and break things or grow and die. But the other one, which is the digital health hat of like, you know, don't hurt or kill anyone. So I think Remarkable is very good at teaching us how to bring those two things together, which, to be honest, is a very unique and fine balance to juggle in the digital health space, because on one hand, like we said, you know, you really want to release things early, make sure they're not too perfect, and you know, as they say, if you're not embarrassed of your early MVPs, you've released them too late. But on the other side of things, you've got the regulatory context around TGA, health outcomes, and the ethics around that as well of make sure that you're not disturbing customers or impacting anyone's health in a negative way. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, Remarkable taught us how to operate as a business, not just a group of problem solvers, and two, to balance the two hats of, you know, health outcomes, but also commercialization as well.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about the structure, like how the Remarkable program is structured? And did you pay to be involved, and what kind of commitment did you have to the program? Yeah, so I mean, Remarkable's kind of set up mirrors that of a lot of other kind of startup type of accelerators around Australia, in the sense that you're funded up front. So no, we did not pay to be part of the accelerator. They provided us funding. So we competed to get in, went through a pitch and boot camp process amongst, you know, dozens of other disability tech focused startups. There were 7 startups that they picked to be part of their 2020 cohort. The program went for 3 months. There was a trade-off of some equity for an investment from Remarkable. The benefit there being that they're now invested in your business and leveraging their networks to ensure that you're successful, not only in context of the program, but for after the program as well. Throughout the program, you know, there were some entrepreneurs in residence and some of the most influential people in the Sydney startup scene, as well as the digital health scene. And we were kind of really, you know, week by week, day by day, sharing with them what the challenges that we were going through for our startups, which were unique, depending on, you know, what industry and what stage your startup was at. Everybody was different, but they were curating kind of the mentorship and the program to ensure that it was in fact serving our needs over that 3 months, 12 weeks. And through that process, you know, it led to a demo day at the end where they shared with their network the growth and success that we'd had as startups over the past 3 months. And that included audiences such as investors, health insurers, potential business partners from the clinical and rehab space, and anybody that they thought really might be interested in investing in, collaborating with, or supporting our startups. Mm-hmm. Last question in regards to Remarkable. Is it possible to participate in Remarkable if you are a current PhD student, or if you are, you know, a research assistant? Like if you are actually, you know, if you're not doing it full time, are you able to participate?
Yeah, it is possible. I think, like with anything else in running a business and doing other things in life, there's definitely a balancing and juggling act that would happen there. But there were definitely teams that were PhD students and were taking that more long path to commercialization kind of regulatory approach, such as Sarah's taken with her business. So there was a range of that to more traditional business to consumer, software as a service, subscription-based types of startups, such as ourselves. So I would say that, yeah, there was definitely a wide range. So Remarkable in particular, their niche being disability tech. Of course, you need to align with the vision around enabling people with disability to have more choice, control, and improve their health outcomes. But I think outside of that, it's open to anyone with a scalable business idea with the potential for impact that goes through the application and interview process.
Mm-hmm. And has anyone else been through any programs, accelerators or incubators or other programs? Zara, can you tell us about it?
I've done a few. I started with the Tech Ready Women Accelerator program, which was a really early starting block. And I think they have applications open at the moment. They've got 100 spots at the federal governments. Yeah, it's really cool. Christy's an absolute champ, and they're really supportive. They just jump in and do everything they can to help. Also did the Investable Games. That wasn't really an accelerator program, but HCF Slingshot was really good. We did that early last year, just as amid COVID, and so the second half of it was online. The other one, and then 2 of the And Health programs, which have been hands down the most, I think the most beneficial, purely just their application of the information that's specific to healthcare, and they go over and above to support everything that you're trying to do and make connections. So I highly recommend getting involved with And Health if you're running a health tech startup. They're really awesome people.
Sarah, can you tell us what And Health is?
Oh, sorry. Thanks for clarifying. I'm probably not the best person to give it. An accelerator program based in Melbourne, but they run shorter programs. So someone like HCF would run a 6 to 12 week program where you come a couple of days a week, and Health will do a 3-day intensive or a 5-day intensive workshop based on different requirements. It's typically, we haven't had to pay anything to go to it so far. We've had funded spots, but there's criteria to access certain courses. So it just means that it's that all the people on the course are really well suited to the programs, and I can't recommend it more.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot about doing their picks.
I was really
you participated in one thing, so
I realized I probably didn't give it a very good justice. Didn't do it justice.
I agree. I think that they're they're definitely the experts in digital health, and they have a handful of programmings at various stages. These intensive and also a longer accelerator program. So Sarah Lacroix is going to be sending out some information on them after this, so you can learn more. Sarah, you raised your hand. You said you participated in a program or two?
Medical device commercialisation training program. So it's another initiative that was backed by New South Wales Health. And look, for us, it was pivotal. And sorry, my voice. From going from a mum and an engineer into this clinical environment, immersion was great at getting the concept and the usability out. But then I've had a very steep learning curve in terms of CEO of a company, and even taking a company out and founding it. And it just helped us really deep dive and explore. And it was full on. If it's something you can do alongside, I imagine, like the Remarkables, but holy moly, you'll lose your voice a lot more than I am now. And going in, talking to, I think we did 200 and something interviews in that place for customer discovery, was just so crucial to work out the minimum viable product, work out the pains and gains, and bring that together and connect you to people like Natasha. I think that's actually where I first and officially met you, and a number of other investors that help you guide in that journey. But there are so many. The one thing I'll caution, and even now we have a number of people, it sounds like, Zara, you've had this experience, will want you to do these programs, and even though you've done one, they'll want you to do another and another and another, and you just need to be so careful with your time. Otherwise you turn out like me, losing a voice, and just know where to focus your energy to. So really, really valuable, but choose the right one for you and your fit, and know that you're going to miss out on bits and pieces along the way, but you can find the right people to help connect you too.
Yeah, I second that. So we've done far too many accelerators. It was only that each next one we did was more niche and more suited to our needs. But definitely be very careful about where you spend your time. And if you are going to go into an accelerator, know what you want to get out of it. And they're really supportive, but you have to make good use of your time. And they're a huge time suck, and it can be really valuable. But just be mindful of your own time there.
I have a couple other questions, but if anyone wants to add anything on the Q&A, I'll be looking at that right now. So feel free to answer. And also, please don't be shy about it. Like, there are people who have never heard of, what an MVP and so forth is, all the way to people who are quite savvy on it. So don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like you are naive. Please feel free to ask anything.
One thing I might put out, if that's okay, while people are thinking and asking, is it sounds like the researcher base and thing is probably the biggest audience. And we spoke about IP before, and we're talking about all these things, is before, even if your idea itself doesn't quite have a patent associated, or you don't know what that IP is, know what your IP rights are, where your personal, like if you're an employee at the university, your contract will say something. If you're a clinician in a hospital, it'll say something else. And even before you have valuable IP, start working out where that stands and what the path to that looks like early, and just be careful who you're telling and how you're telling it. Because if you are going on those forums, are you going to these courses and you start disclosing, you can actually really hinder yourself, and you can also create conflicts without knowing you're doing it, with university, with employers, with other partners. So just know early is probably the biggest thing I'll say from the earlier conversation. Sorry.
Great. We have a really good question, which is, how do you find like-minded partners / co-founders at the starting stage? Really critical, particularly for those inventor founders, like I was mentioning before, when you might have a limited network and you need someone that's quite business-minded, or someone with a completely different skill set. Does anyone want to, Andrew?
Yeah, so I do think that diversity in a founding team and diversity in a starting team is incredibly important. And in terms of trying to find partners and co-founders at the starting stage, I'm a big believer that if you are setting out to solve an important problem, there's probably other people around there that are wanting to solve that problem too. So for us, you know, we built up a team of, you know, clinicians, therapists, engineers, product designers, and kind of people with the lived experience, because the problem that we were solving was one that other people shared as well. And the good thing about a problem that other people share as well is it probably means there's a market for it as well. So I would say go to the spaces, the meetups, the community groups, the initiatives where people really gravitate around those problems. For us, it was around rehabilitation support, community groups around spinal cord injury, talks about accessibility and inclusion, and start conversations with people there. Share your passion for solving this problem, and that passion will attract other people with different skills. And beyond that, be really open-minded about how people with different skills are going to interpret a problem probably a little bit differently to you. But guess what? That's the value of a co-founder, and that's the value of a diverse team. So yeah, attend events, be passionate, and speak about what you're doing, and yeah, really gravitate towards that problem space.
Zara?
Yeah, really great points, Andrew. And I'm on the other end of the spectrum, and I'm a sole founder. And while I don't recommend it to anyone, it's a lot of work, and you definitely need a diverse range of skills. And I don't pretend to have half of the skills required to pull this off by myself. But just to counter that, like, it is possible to do it yourself. You just have to consider things like, I got to a point where it's like, I should have a co-founder. And we've had some investors say no to us because they're like, we want to see you have a co-founder. There's plenty of good stats about solo founders as well, but I think also it's just a case of finding who the gaps are, and do you want the gaps in your knowledge or ability, and do you want them as a co-founder, or do you just pay an employee to do that and maybe offer them ESOP shares? So really hard to find the right people that are co-founders, and it's like going into marriage with someone. It's a really big decision, so both are viable options. I think just knowing that if you don't have them in the founding team, you're probably going to have to hire them and spend money on getting that kind of talent in the team. There's plenty of advice out there, and yeah, just have to pay for it.
Sarah?
So I'm with Zara on this. Is when we started out, I kept getting told, you need a co-founder, you need a co-founder. And I spent a good couple of years looking for a co-founder. And I think that finding someone willing to take the risk of running a company and willing to put in as much as you want in terms of the skin of the game is really, really hard. And you shouldn't let that make or break. I ended up doing what Zara did. I looked, but was it a make or break in terms of improving outcomes for mothers and babies? You can't make that decision. So ended up being a sole founder is really, really hard. It's definitely, if you're in this to make a quick buck, it's not the way. Really, really hard. You need to know where your weaknesses are, be willing to bring people in. We've got an ESOP, and that definitely helps get those expertise and balance. But again, it's different in terms of the co-founding. And if you find that right person, like, amazing. I know some incredible companies that have that founding, and there are some hard days you really wish you had someone that isn't on the payroll, that you can talk on those equal terms. And that's where advisors or just overall amazing people like in the ecosystem come through as well.
Great. And Natasha, can you maybe talk about Uniseed and the service that you can kind of provide in creating startup teams?
Yeah, great idea. So we're an early stage investment fund, and we only invest really in university IP and sometimes student IP. That's becoming more popular now, but it always has to sort of have a deep tech flavour. So that does rule out a lot of types of businesses. I work closely with Sydney University's Incubator. I'm a mentor there. I'm quite often in the space, but you definitely can call on me anytime. And I like to talk to people early. So if you've got an idea, you can just reach out to me at TashSR on Twitter or n.rawlings@uniseed.com. I'm happy for you guys to share those details, and really just happy to have that initial conversation, give you a steer. I think, Andrew, I was looking back at you. I think I recommended Remarkable to you. You probably found out about it from other folks in the ecosystem, but, you know, I try and funnel people where I think they can get help as well. So reach out to me, and, you know, we're at Queensland University, Melbourne University. I also help out at UNSW with their 10X Founders program, so same sort of deal. And yeah, I mean, we give that initial investment, and then I'm often on the board, but we do a lot of that, you know, pre-investment work too, that sometimes leads to an investment and sometimes it doesn't. And we don't care. We're really about creating a cultural change at research institutions.
Great. We have a question from Luke Gordon, which is for the record of invention or an invention disclosure is another way to put it. You need to, did you have a solid minimum viable product? What was required before you submitted that record of invention? How did you know you were ready to submit? How did you know you had an invention? I don't know if anyone can answer that. Sarah can probably answer that.
I think a lot of that comes to do a bit of research in terms of the type of IP you're after, and the type of IP protection that's governed. So example is, in our case, initially, we were looking at a very unique configuration of, say, a hardware combination to capture something completely different clinically. And that helped us understand we needed a patent. Whereas if you're looking in the software world and the digital world, it gets a bit complex. So different IP attorneys will have different views on this, but I'd actually engage. I think DCC, I don't know if they still do their days out at Cicada. Natasha might be able to add more, but there are access. Some of these hubs have days where IP attorneys sit there and will answer your questions for free, basically, and give you some guidelines. But things like algorithms, that can be a bit harder to protect. But that would give you your basis in terms of understand, is what you're doing different? Do some research on what other companies are doing and the patents there. I just want to stipulate there is a difference between is it patentable and do you have the freedom to operate as well? So do some research to understand if you patented your idea and that was successful, can you use that idea without infringing other patents, or are there patents that you might want to look at licensing, for example? But in terms of the knowledge, it's do your research and go float the idea. Talk to, if you're in Sydney Uni, it'd be CDIP, and that's something you can do in confidentiality if it's their IP as well. Get someone that you trust under an NDA, even if it is, so talk to someone individually. If you're talking to investors, they don't tend to sign an NDA unless you're in the due diligence process, but float the idea in a confidential way and get feedback on it. But the ROI itself, you could ask for a copy of it and they'll provide, it walks you through the information. And if you can fill in the blanks, you probably should be putting an ROI in.
Mm-hmm. And you can access that on the internet if you're at the University of Sydney. So we are at time right now. Before I thank our guests, there's one last question, which I think is a nice kind of food for thought for everyone on listening. What would you, Jacob Darkin says, what would you do if you're at the beginning of your journey in your tech startup and had $10,000? What would your advice be? Unfortunately, we don't have time for that. But thank you everyone so much. I thought this was a really great discussion. I think we could have kept it going on for a little longer. Thank you, Andrew and Zara and Luke and Natasha and Sarah. Thank you so much, Lacroix, for organizing everything.